Welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I come from the acting background.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm a broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right.
I thought I'd change it up a little.
Hey, it's a big night.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
This is it's kind of all culminating in this episode. All of our episodes up till now. I mean, for this first year, I think we've been talking about a lot of new movies that have come out, for better or worse, good or bad, and now we're gonna kind of like consolidate all that down to a smaller version of that into one list. So we obviously can't speak as fluently as we have about all the movies again, I guess. But still, I do want to go through and do our top 5 movies of the year.
You know, I always have a question.
Okay.
So my question is, was this list hard for you to make?
It was hard for me to. So, the way I do my lists is I write down all the movies that I've seen, and then I just start like chunking them, and I say like, what are the movies that need to be on? Like, what are the movies that I can just get rid of? And then that's my next list, and I just keep shrinking, and shrinking down to 10, not really an issue. Shrinking down to 5, big problem.
Okay, that's why I was curious. I actually do the opposite. I see the film, if I have an emotional reaction to it, I write it on the list. And then I tag it 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, if you will. Mm-hmm. Since we're doing our top 5, I had to do that. So I narrowed it down to 13 out of whatever the, amount.
However many you saw.
Yeah. And the amount on the list and the amount of ones that I wanted to see. And then I was like, okay, these are honorable mentions. And then 10, 9, 8. It wasn't difficult, though. But I was surprised what ended up as number 1. I was surprised.
I wasn't.
No?
But you know what my number 1 is, I'm sure. But
I'm not sure, actually. When I was looking at the list, I was looking at it twofold. I was going, okay, this is mine. What's going to be Josh's? Like, I know these will probably make it. Yeah. And I know 2 of them didn't make my list that made your list. I know it.
And I know 2 of them didn't make my top 5 list that I really, like, at the beginning of the year, I would have guaranteed they would have been on my top 5 list.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
So, okay. And then you want to tell everybody what we're going to do closer to the end of the show?
Yeah, after we do our top 5s, and we can do all honorable mentions too. I think that'll help out. At least it'll help me out, because I do want to talk about some of these movies
Absolutely.
that are not on my top 5. But after that, we're going to go through and give our picks, per se, in quotes, I guess. I feel weird doing that because it's like I don't have any kind of
Yeah, but you've seen everything this year, so you qualify for at least a watcher's opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, your opinion is, this is what the show's based on, our love of movies and just what we felt, what we thought, what we saw. So based on that, we're going to do who we think will win the Oscar for the top 5 or 6 categories and who we would vote for, which it can be different.
Definitely.
We're not saying who will win, who should win.
No.
We're saying who will win, who we would vote for.
Exactly.
It can be different.
If it was a voting pool of 1, that's who would get the Oscar.
And a lot of people were like, wait, I can't distinguish what that means. Okay, last year, I'll give you an example. Matthew McConaughey will win. Leonardo DiCaprio should win.
I would agree with that statement, yeah.
And I would have voted for Leonardo DiCaprio. Can't speak tonight. Here we go. Good Lord. You started out before the show. Now
That's right.
But it's more my thing anyway. But anyway, so I hope that makes it distinguishable.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Oh no, I think it'll be fine. So, all right. So let's do honorable mentions in no order. I've got 5 of them.
I have 3.
All right.
That didn't make the top 10. So there are 5 other films that aren't in the top 5. But the 3 that didn't make the top 10 that I thought were interesting films that I think need to be made mention of again. So
okay.
You want to go first?
Lego Movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be up there for you.
You'll see.
Okay.
Lego Movie, it's so much fun, and I've only seen it once, and I really want to see it again. I just, haven't carved out the time. And you know what? Maybe if I saw it again, it would bump up there. There's a couple of movies that... there's one movie on my top 5 that has done that. So, but yeah, Lego Movie, it's so much fun, and I was really kind of trepidatious about it. I was like, this is just going to be the cynicism that I have. This is going to be a cash grab type of a thing. They're just going to plaster the Lego logo on everything and then try to sell it to little kids. But when you look at that movie, the one thing I was holding out hope on is the guys that wrote and directed it, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. They did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and they've done 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, and I like all those movies. So this movie was, I think was, a notch above because of the constraints that they had to work with and how they made it so interesting.
Yeah, clever, bright, inventive. I think it should have been nominated for original screenplay. I do.
No, it's cool.
I do, because
it's a good, it's a good
well
story.
done. It plays on itself. It jokes itself, but it also takes itself seriously. It's got a really deep integrity. It's got a really deep heart. And, you can laugh about, we're talking about a Lego movie, but it had more heart than 40 other of those films on that list.
Yeah.
I mean, and the story, the way it weaved together and the way that you saw the different lands and the pirate ships and all the other stuff, and then how everything was manipulated in a way. The pirate guy is manipulated. He doesn't look like a pirate. He looks like this giant kind of GoBot transformer pirate. And you're like, what is that all about? But you're not
That's
thinking.
what kids do. They put a bunch of little pieces
but you
together.
don't know that until you see later on what happens in the film. And it touched me. I mean, that kind of stuff, be careful what you say, children will listen, I saw was a theme this year. It kind of all goes down to boyhood. It's be careful what you say. Into the Woods, same thing. It's all about be careful, because they are really listening and it means something to them. These worlds mean something to them. And they took the Lego movie seriously. So it made number 10 on my list. I actually listed the 10 films that just came to mind when I went through the original list. And then I listed it 1 through 10. And then I went back and broke it down to my top 5. But Lego movie stayed up there in the top 10. So I highly recommend it. I think it's really well done.
What's your first one?
Godzilla.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
because when I saw it as a poster in the list, and I thought, wow, okay, it's not anything I've thought about since. I did think about it a couple days later after seeing it, which is always a good sign for me. But I thought, wow, I got to see that again. There were a few on the list that I went, if I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. No big deal. And then were other ones that were like, well, I'd see that if I came across it. The ones that I have seen, literally, I went, I'm glad I saw that. And if I hadn't seen it, I'd been like, I want to see that. Godzilla.
All right. Great. Inherent Vice.
Really only made it only, what?
Yeah. So here's the deal. What? This is one of those movies that at the beginning.
Let me take a moment to be a little surprised about that, because I thought it was going to be at least in your top 10.
But I'm being honest. Being honest because I'm not going to put a movie on my top 5 just because Paul Thomas Anderson directed it.
Okay.
Or just because he wrote it. And
I love that about you.
Because it was not what I had expected. And we talked about this in our Inherent Vice episode. The movie's not what I expected, and it's my fault because I wasn't ready for what Paul Thomas Anderson was going to do. And so I'm not...
Wait,
it hit me.
Explain this a little bit more. So you had an expectation about what the story was going to be like? See, I don't have this issue.
If you look at the trailer, it looks like, to me, it looked like an ensemble movie written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson that had comedic elements, more comedic elements than dramatic elements. And so that's what I was looking for, more slapsticky Magnolia. And I was looking for kind of like either the intertwining epic nature of that movie, and what I got was a straightforward gumshoe, comedy. And
based on one character who interacts with different characters, but it doesn't interconnect like the other films that he's done.
Exactly. And for various reasons, however, he did it that way. I'm not ready to say that movie is not a great movie. And it goes back to our kind of like the theory that we've called together regarding the Coen brothers, where the first time I watch a Coen brothers movie, I'm kind of like, what's the big deal? And
depending on which one it is.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I think No Country was a little bit different, but most, like, Big Lebowski, even Fargo to some extent.
Miller's Crossing. Fargo I loved immediately.
See, but I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But
it's a bit much to take in.
Yeah, yeah. And so Burn After Reading, that one completely passed me by the first time.
I didn't even feel like I watched it the first time. I was like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I
so-
remember some of it, and then I saw it again, and I was like, oh, this is pretty funny.
2-3 times in.
Yeah.
it's hilarious. And so I feel like he moved into that kind of Coen Brothers territory, and I have not had a chance to see it again. And so I'm gonna have to revisit that one, and that's why it's in my top 10, but it's not in my top 5.
Fascinating.
All right, how about you?
Cheap Thrills.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm glad we're talking about that movie.
Yeah, well, we haven't had a chance to
that's
because
so
we
cool.
haven't done the episode that we've talked about difficult movies to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the Nymphomaniac posters in the list, I thought, they're on my list. I've seen them, meaning the movies I have watched this year. I haven't gotten through part 2.
I haven't either.
I will eventually. But something about, for whatever reason, I thought Cheap Thrills it came out years before this year. I didn't realize it came out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it on the list, I thought, you know what? This is an interesting movie for a lot of different reasons. It's one of those movies where you can tell the difference between, not that there's anything wrong with just being a moviegoer who likes popcorn and a soda and somebody who watches the movies for entertainment. I'm all about it. That's what they started out as. But they've developed into this art form. And I call that watching a film.
Yep.
People might call that pretentious. That's fine. But for whatever reason, there's certain films that you can sort of figure out how people feel about movies by mentioning them. And you can challenge people by saying, have you seen Antichrist?
Yeah.
And if they go, "Ugh," and they have a reaction to it, you can tell where their basis of film-going taste is somewhere around.
It's kind of a litmus test.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. That's a good term for it. This film is one of those films that I go, you want to see something challenging that I'm confused about, I'm not sure was good, I'm not sure the acting was, at the best that it could possibly be. I think they did the best that they could do, and it's not bad. And some people might consider it not great acting, and I can see that. But for me, I thought the idea of the situation I thought it got really illogical, and maybe the stakes that he had were not worth what he had to do. But I did think, be careful what you wish for, and be careful about everybody has a price tag, because that movie pushes that thought to an extreme. So I thought, when I saw it on the list, I thought, I've got to mention it because, one, we've not talked about it.
Yeah.
And we will when we talk about, we'll probably talk about it after our 50th, 60th episode. When everybody is comfortable with the way that we discuss movies and no one's thinking that we're being judgmental or, pretentious, yet again, another use of it. But
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning. I think if you want to be challenged and not just watch, Godzilla, which there's nothing wrong with that because I just talked about it. It's on the same list as Godzilla. I think you need to see Cheap Thrills because it sparks a conversation. You have to wonder, especially if you know people who watched it and you start talking to them about it and their ideas are different than what you expected them to be. You're like, wait a second, I'm not sure I know that person after all. So it's worth seeing again.
Definitely. All right. I'm going to blow your mind again. Gone Girl.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So not in the top 10?
It is in the top 10.
It's in the top
these
10.
These are my top 10.
but not the top 5.
Not my top 5, yeah.
Okay. Now I'm really into this conversation because I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it's because and we did kind of talk about this too during the Inherent Vice episode. Gone Girl is exactly what I was hoping for as a David Fincher moviegoer, but it wasn't. It didn't challenge me, and it didn't challenge I'm sure we'll talk about one of the performances later on in the episode, but it didn't challenge me as a moviegoer. It seems like he's fine doing what he does, and I love what he does. So in a lot of ways, like in the same way that I didn't necessarily want Paul Thomas Anderson to branch out and explore different things, I don't want David Fincher to branch out from his niche. And I could watch movies like Gone Girl all day, but there's other movies that are higher up on the list that I really need, that I really want to talk about.
Here's an interesting question since you put the two together. What would it have been like if Paul Thomas Anderson directed Gone Girl and David Fincher directed Inherent Vice? Right there, that idea right there makes me go.
That makes me excited.
Yeah.
That
and
really does.
For whatever makes us excited about thinking about that is what's lacking in those two films for me. Mm-hmm. And Gone Girl didn't even make my list.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We will talk about it because of the performance, but that that definitely is something that I wish wouldn't go unseen, her performance, Rosamund Pike's. But other than that, I want to rent it again. But curious question. You said that you watched it with your wife, Steph, and she had all these guesses of what was going on, and you guys went to bed, and then you were like, none of that's going to come true. What?
Yes.
How did she?
She only watched half of it.
Okay,
and
so
then,
she has,
then she finished it the next night.
So what'd she think based on what she thought was going to happen?
She kind of flipped out because she didn't really see that coming, and she understood it. That's the other thing is that, you know, I mean, I'm so like honed in on a movie, but I mean, my wife she looks at movies as just like escapism, and I just want
entertainment.
I just want to get away from. So if a movie asks too much from her, she checks out.
Fair enough.
And yeah, and I totally
That's a
get that.
valid way to watch movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Totally.
I totally get that. But she still was able to follow the whole movie all the way through, and she does ask questions. And she doesn't do this in the movie theater, but if we're just sitting on the couch watching a movie, she will kind of like ask questions, and I purposely do not answer those questions.
And you don't react.
And I don't react. I don't give anything away.
That's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
No tells or anything. And so she was doing that, kind of asking questions, and then, you know, I didn't give anything away or anything like that. And she was genuinely surprised, and she totally got it. It wasn't like she said, like, I don't understand what's going on here. She did not say that. She totally got the whole thing, which is a testament to Fincher's movie making and, you know, the script to a certain extent too. So, you know, it took
a moviegoer, and she delved into the side of the film goer's mind. So that's great. That's
and it
most
was
impressive.
And it was successful in the movie theater.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of like I think, see, the other thing, I'm not really sure, because I think it was kind of a water cooler type of a movie where people are like, oh, have you seen Gone Girl? And then if you haven't, then they don't say anything, which is kind of the opposite of today's culture, where it's like the day after something happens, it's on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere. But people were kind of guarding certain secrets in Gone Girl. And that's kind of neat that we can still kind of do that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, as a public, so... And then those were your three, right?
Well,
or you had another one.
Yeah, Locke.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, it's such a shame, but it's also a great thing that there were such strong male actor performances this year that Tom Hardy didn't even get considered. No. But he could have very well, in a lesser year of, I mean, the category was jam-packed this year. Yeah. If not so-and-so, then, you know, Channing Tatum in my book. If not so-and-so, Jake Gyllenhaal. Tom Hardy didn't even come to my mind, I guess because, you know, we'd seen it earlier on in the year. But after I saw the list, I was like, oh, my goodness. I'm glad I get a chance to say, you know what? Tom Hardy deserves to be talked about on this episode because his performance is outstanding. And I like the movie, too. And I think it's one of those movies that it's not pure entertainment, but it's not pure thought-provoking. It's not deep, dark art, you know, but it's somewhere in between. And it's interesting because you're like, wait, what is he doing? Why is he doing this? And wait, he's basically ruining his whole life for this. So there's something at stake. And it's all shot in a car with just his face. Yeah. And it's just a testament to what just uber talent he really is. So Tom Hardy, Locke.
I mean, it's
a must see.
Yeah, and we knew this beforehand, before we saw that movie, but he is one of those actors who can carry a whole movie. And
see, I don't know if I wouldn't have put that thought together.
I mean, you saw Bronson.
That's true.
That's where I kind of
see, I don't think of him in Bronson. I think of that guy.
You think of
tripping
that
man.
Crazy person.
That comedy known as Bronson.
Which is another... Which is another reason why, which is another reason why he's a great actor. Okay, so those are your three, and then I guess I'll just. So since we're doing, this is tough. I'm just gonna keep going with what I did. The last two are Nightcrawler and Foxcatcher. Not in my top 5. And we'll talk about them together.
This is why we need to film this, because my reaction must be hysterical to look at. I'm dumbfounded now.
Yeah.
What is in your top 5?
You'll see.
Oh my goodness.
You'll see. And so both of those movies are movies that are difficult to watch, and the directing is we talked about Foxcatcher, we talked about Bennett Miller, and how this was the first movie that I noticed Bennett Miller versus the other versus Capote and Moneyball. and this is Dan Gilroy's first time directing, although he is a pretty acclaimed writer of movies. But
No, Bennett Miller directed it.
I'm talking about both at the same time.
Oh,
Foxcatcher
Nightcrawler.
and
Okay,
Nightcrawler.
yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah, and then you've got amazing performances in both movies, actor wise, and then and they're movies that I don't. I guess what it came down to is they're movies that I'm not going to be able to watch, just like down the road. Like I'm going to have to like be in a particular mood or situation where I want to watch this, or be in a kind of a more analytical mood and try to pull out. I'm sure I'm going to rent both of these movies, but as far as like, buying these movies, I don't know if I'm going to buy them because it's going to be difficult to reacclimate myself to that world and purposefully for 2 hours. Each of them. I mean, they're similar in that way, in that they evoke an emotion and a situation, an uncomfortable situation. But
Well, let me mention Foxcatcher along the same lines, because it didn't make my top 5, but it did make my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I can't stop thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I said this on the podcast. I don't know if I liked it or not. I have no idea. And I knew from the moment that trailer started that this is the world we were going into.
Yeah.
And I resisted it. And the only reason why I saw it, I think, were 2 reasons. Because of Steve Carell's performance, and Mark Ruffalo was getting Oscar buzz. Both of them got nominated.
He's great. I mean, all 3 of those guys are great.
Superb. With the exception of Channing Tatum being left off of most people's list, but that's okay. This is the type of film that people are going to look back on and might not understand, but they're going to say, wait, how did he get left off of everybody's talking about list? No one mentioned him, and that's a little bit of a shame. People talked about in the reviews how great he was, but they immediately mentioned Steve Carell in an Oscar-nominatable part. Same with Mark Ruffalo, which I didn't really see at first. Then after I started thinking about it and that one scene that he has. But this film, I cannot get out of my mind. I was thinking about it when I was making this list. I can't get that last scene out of my head where he's coming out of that door in that gate area when Steve Carell and the cops are surrounding.
Yeah, he's kind of trying to escape, I
yeah,
guess.
Even though that's technically not what happened in real life, it didn't matter. He captured that feeling. So will I ever see it again? Possibly, just to challenge myself to see if that same feeling exists. Do I want to see it again? That's a whole nother question. On the opposite end of that, we'll talk about Nightcrawler in just a second more, but I don't necessarily, you went and saw it, told me I should go see it. I was like, eh. Then I went to see it and I was over the moon about it. I was like, wow. There's something about living in that dark space that I had no idea Jake Gyllenhaal could go to, which I've talked about, that I want to see if he scares me as much the second time as he did the first time. And I will say this. We talked about Rene Russo, and we talked about the young lady in Gone Girl, the sister. A lot of people have mentioned them consistently on the quote-unquote snubs of the Oscars.
The missed list, yeah.
If this person should win, this is the person who should be on the list. Both of them have made the list consistently. So,
great.
yeah, and they should be talked about. Both of their performances should be talked about. Everybody's performance in Gone Girl should be talked about. I actually thought the performances outweighed the movie. Foxcatcher, on the other hand, is different. The performances are top-notch, on point, scary, deliciously dark. Ugh. Like, what is he thinking about when he goes to that place? I can't imagine it. And I also thought the world was interesting, too. I'd never seen anything like that. I, known about those people. You work in that field, so, it's a little bit different. Your eyes are a little bit more open to the
Nightcrawler, I mean?
Yeah, to those possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, but our newsroom is nothing like that.
But you still are around all of that environment.
Sure,
so,
yeah. I mean, definitely. All right, well, how about let's do your number 5?
Well,
are we going to do 5 to 1? Or?
We can do that.
Okay.
We can do that. Okay, so my number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll do my number 5.
Okay.
My number 5 is The One I Love.
Yeah, it's on my list too.
Oh, really?
Not as number 5 though. It did make my top 5. Okay. It was number 6.
I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. All right.
Well, I love the poster. I just told you before the podcast that I got a little obsessed with looking at the posters. I couldn't think of the actual films because I was looking at the posters going, cool, I love that poster. Oh yeah, The One I Love. It's going on my list.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we already talked about, we did an episode on it, kind of a half an episode, I guess, on it, and it's a world that I'm going to revisit because I feel like there's more in this situation, there's more in this world, and it's so well put together. It's one of those movies, it's like kind of like a Primer. Well, it's not, definitely not as challenging as Primer, but it's those cool sci-fi but not sci-fi, real world science fiction type movies where you can kind of explore that, and it's something that's tangible as opposed to say Guardians of the Galaxy, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But at the same time, it's tangible, and it's a grounded version of science fiction, which interests me. And it's a relationship movie, and putting those things together always come up with interesting situations, and it's done in a good way. Like I don't know if this was. I think this was a scripted movie, but I think there was a little bit of improvisation involved too, but
well, with those people, how could you not?
Yeah, definitely. All right, your number 4.
My number 4 is American Sniper.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I knew it was going to make my top 5 the moment I walked out of it. I didn't know where it was going to be listed, but it has become this phenomenon. Mm-hmm. It has made a gazillion $1 million. Oh, yeah. I think it's the second top grossing film of this year, something like that. Or it's coming.
Oh, you mean of 2014?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's coming up on that. I think the only other movie that made more money was the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, wow.
I think.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. And the trials going on right now of the guy who killed Chris Kyle, mm-hmm. and that's always in the news, and the big controversy about what the facts versus the fiction, all this other stuff is going on about this film, and that people are, became political, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. And, people made some statements on Twitter that people were bashing. It's all about democracy and freedom and all about the war and all this other stuff. And I just go, wait, slow down. I get why all this is going on. Mm-hmm. I get it. It's an interesting story about a real life person who this tragic thing happened to. And I'm not just talking about the end of his life. I'm talking about everything. Mm-hmm. Okay. My words, nobody else's.
Sure.
The bottom line for me is it's so grounded in such deep, rich characters that you cannot deny its heart. He is so on point in this movie. I cannot see Bradley Cooper in my mind's eye. When I see a picture of Chris Kyle, I go, that's the guy I saw in the movie. I believe that was him. Mm-hmm. And then I see a picture of Bradley Cooper next to it because they've been doing that throughout the news. Yeah. And I go, wait, but that's the actor who played him. Wait, I'm confused because in my mind, I see Chris Kyle, even though I didn't even know what he looked like before the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I did on some level, but, and I'm glad this is number 4 for me so I can mention once again, Sienna Miller, because I was thinking about it today. We talked about this. She's unrecognizable in this part, and all she's doing is wearing a different hair color. Mm-hmm. But it's also everything else that she pulled out of not such a great written part. Yeah. It's got basic cliche.
She has the worst lines in the movie.
She has cliche lines. She has stereotypical, and she pulls it off, hook, line, and sinker, believable. And you go, my heart is breaking because I get exactly where you're coming from. She seemed like that woman. And then now I see the real person. They just had this big thing about her being at the trial and all this other stuff. And it's not that I see the person in the movie as the person in real life, like with Bradley Cooper. Does that make sense, mm-hmm. what I'm saying about that? Okay. It's that my heart absolutely breaks for her when I see her in real life because I saw what her life was like through what Sienna Miller did. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, and because I thought it was not about what people thought this movie was going to be about, I think they thought it was going to be propaganda, and mm-hmm. it wasn't. It's a simple movie about a guy. It's not a simple movie. I mean, for me, it's a simple movie about a guy who decided to do something, and he happened to be the best at it, and he had issues with that. Mm-hmm. And the integrity and the grounded performances just gave it such weight for me that I cannot stop thinking about it. I just can't. So that's why it's number 4.
Great. All right. My number 3 is your number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy. So
I knew it'd
that's
be up
why
there.
That's why I said we can wait. So if that happens again, we can wait and talk about it.
No problem.
Same time. So we had a whole episode on it. We both just kind of like slobbered all over it and said it was a great movie. And since then, because I think I'd only seen it once when we did that episode. I've now seen it, I think, 4 times.
Really?
And it's a lot of fun every time. And it's not a hollow movie, I mean, it's not just like a shell of a movie or just the basics of a superhero movie, and that just like, let's just throw something on the screen. I mean, there's heart to it, there's relationships in it. They're not as I don't know, strong or developed as a character study piece would be, but at the same time you get comedy, you get action, and it's very well made. I mean, the CG effects in there never took me out of the movie. I mean, which you can expect from these types of big budget movies from Marvel and Warner Brothers, I think is who released it, but just from Marvel Studios, they do a great job. And the other thing that was amazing is that growing up not being a comic book reader and not knowing who Guardians of the Galaxy were, and I know there's been different permutations of that, different groups of that, not knowing anything about that, I was able to come into this movie, and this also being the first movie that wasn't the first Marvel movie that wasn't based on Earth,
Right.
centered around the Earth. I was able to just walk right in and understand enough to enjoy the movie without having to know, like, you don't even necessarily need to know who Thanos is and how he relates and what the Infinity Gauntlet is and all. You don't need to know any of that stuff. You just walk in and you have fun.
Well, you said something about it, maybe not as deep and as enriched character study as a character study. I don't know if I agree with that 100%, because my first thought about this film is, tell me what is wrong with this movie. I mean, you really can't find a whole lot of fault with it, because the special effects, like you said, are great. Mm-hmm. Some people found some fault with some simple things, like when they're falling from the spacecraft and they get enveloped in the branches and they fall down and nobody dies. Everybody's like, "Oh, that would never have happened."
Oh.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's
Okay.
a fantasy film.
Yeah.
But the only thing I would not 100%, I 100% agree with everything you said, but I would add something. I do think it was well written and the characters are well written, because when he sees his Walkman in somebody else's hands,
Oh, yeah.
and he's like, "Hey, that's mine.
Yeah.
That's mine." And he has that look on his face. He looks like that 10-year-old little kid who lost his mother way back then. And that's hard to do, especially in a movie that's so large and all about the special effects. Mm-hmm. It is well written, and the integrity that everybody brought to it. Chris Pratt, banner year.
Mm-hmm.
Lego movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. You can't go wrong. It's going to be interesting to see what he develops into as an actor, and I think he's got depth, and I think he shows it. And just because there's not more of those moments, like the one with the Walkman, doesn't make it not deep for me.
Well,
it's definitely deep rooted.
Like really close within deep rooted. I am Groot.
I am Groot.
Like 30 seconds after that, you see Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah.
I almost said Rocky Raccoon. Big Beatles fan. Rocket Raccoon comes out after the shower, and you can see, and there's that whole, like, no words are exchanged, but Chris Pratt, looks at his back and sees all these, pieces. You can tell that his spine has been refused. Rocket Raccoon's spine has been refused, and all of these things have happened to him. And you don't really understand what exactly has happened to him, but you understand there's a look and there's a feeling that you get that the Chris Pratt character sees that he's gone through a lot too. You know, it bonds them together.
Well, what's interesting about that for me is that you can hear it in the bitterness of the vocals that Bradley Cooper does. You can hear that he's bitter because he is this scientific. Well, you can kind of hear it from the beginning because he sort of sounds like the angry man. You're like, why is this raccoon so upset? He can talk and walk. What's the problem? But there's a bitterness to him because he doesn't fit anywhere.
That's true.
And you know, it's the island of misfit toys, basically. They all come together. But other than, you know, that small little thing about him and the branches, people who've seen the film know what I'm talking about. It didn't dawn on me for a split second that was an issue, but overall, top notch.
Definitely.
Must see.
Definitely. Your number 2.
My number 2 is Birdman.
My number 2 also.
Really?
Yep.
Are you surprised that I said it was number 2?
I'm very surprised.
And not number 1?
Yes.
I was too.
Okay.
I sat there and looked at the list and went, what?
That's crazy.
Then I think I know which one is yours number 1 now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. There's not enough I can say about this film. I loved it from the beginning all the way through the middle, all the way through the end. There's not a moment I cannot wait to see again. I have not stopped thinking about it. I've thought about it many times over the past couple months since I've seen it. I can't wait to see it again. I've resisted seeing it again because I've had other things I've got to go pay to see, and there's no time to during Oscar season if I'm going to see everything.
It's true.
Which I try to see all the top 5 categories at least, and I've seen everything except for one now, and I will see it by Oscar night. But there's just nothing about this film I don't think works. First of all, Peter Travis from Rolling Stones was doing his Who Will Win, Who Should Win, which we're going to talk about later. And he said that the naysayers say that Birdman is style over substance. And then Peter Travis goes, they're wrong. It's a classic.
Oh.
And then he says it about Boyhood, too. They say that the naysayers say it's just a gimmick. They're wrong. It's a classic.
Wow.
And he actually picked Boyhood as his favorite film of the year. He said his heart was with Boyhood. I'm the opposite. Yeah. My heart is with Birdman.
Mine too.
Hook, line, and sinker. There's nothing that, I have to now consider Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu as one of my favorite directors of all time, because every time I mention a film that he's directed, I light up and I go, oh, I can't believe this guy's directed all these films. Babel, beautiful. 21 Grams, which I loved. And now Birdman. The performances are outstanding, which we talked about on the podcast. And I had predicted Oscar nominations. They all came true.
And they did.
And I'm so happy to get a chance to say this. I was wrong about Edward Norton. This is not his second. This is his third nomination. I mentioned it a couple podcasts ago that this was his second nomination.
So I got American History X, but
Primal Fear.
Which
he won.
That was his first movie, wasn't it?
I don't know if it's his first movie, but it's
His
one of
first
it.
big movie.
Yeah,
maybe.
I believe he won the Golden Globe, but not the Oscar. I believe Kevin Spacey won for Usual Suspects. I believe. And it wasn't until this last year, strangely enough, that Kevin Spacey won a Golden Globe. He has like 9 nominations, never won for American Beauty, none of his movies. And then he just won for House of Cards.
Oh, cool. That's neat.
So Birdman.
Yes. I can't really add too much to that. We've talked about it, up and down. Like when I got out of that movie, I was walking in my car. I texted you. I said, Birdman, see it now.
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of a movie. And because we kind of guard ourselves, because I guard myself to the point of like, I'll watch a trailer, but then once I saw that trailer, I backed way off. And I was like, I just want to go to the movie and I want to experience it. And it did not disappoint from, like you said, from the performances to the feeling that is conveyed by the motion of the camera, by the music, the score essentially, the kind of like the rhythmic drum score. It's only a drum set, pretty much. I don't know if there's much in the way
there's
of
some other stuff,
orchestral stuff,
but that's prominent.
Yeah,
it feels like your heart's beating at that drum beat. It feels like your heart changes its pace during
and
the film.
It builds tension too.
Yeah, big time.
And just that constantly moving camera and the drum underlaying the whole thing, the drum set underlaying the whole thing. It's something that I definitely want to revisit, which I could go right out today and buy the DVD because it just came out today. So
Yay.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait till after the Oscars. I have
Yeah,
one more
that's
thing
true.
to see, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing a bunch of TV shows right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I will definitely, I cannot wait till I'm like, okay,
Okay.
I can't wait.
That's awesome.
All right, so do you want to try to guess each other's number ones?
Yo, no, I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't do it.
I think I could take a guess.
We'll go for it. Guess my number one.
Whiplash.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Whiplash is a movie that I've been excited about for over a year, and when I saw it, it was better than I had hoped. I thought it may have been a kind of a gimmicky type of a movie, but the way it is we talked about this before. I think the editing, and in some ways it's the script, but I think it's mainly how that movie was put together is masterful. And I think this is Damien Chazelle's first feature-length movie, and that to me is amazing. It makes me so excited to see what he's going to do next. So,
well, I agree 100%, and I will say this. Remember when we were talking about it and we were talking about possible Oscar nominations, and we knew J.K. Simmons was a lock, and he's gone straight down the line, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
oh, me too.
Yeah, totally okay with it. I said, these types of films, these small films have a way of showing up on the Oscars. And you were like, oh, I don't know. I hope so, but I'm not sure. And I was like, wait a second. They show up. And now it's been kind of like it's not an underdog, but it's like the one film that if you've seen it, people go, oh, I love that movie.
Yep.
You should see that movie. They're excited about it, but there's a calmness about it. It's not like it's an underdog. Go see that movie.
Well, and you said about Beasts of the Southern Wild, it was a similar thing. Once they expanded up to 10, up to 10 movies. It's not exactly. It's 9 this year, right?
Yeah, no, it's 8 this year.
Oh, it's 8 this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but still, you get a movie like Beasts of the Southern Wild or Whiplash, and the reason why you saw Beasts of the Southern Wild was because it was nominated for an Academy Award, right?
Probably the only reason, I'll be
Okay.
honest with you.
And
no
so-
one had talked about it. I didn't know anything about it. And then all of a sudden this director showed up. And I was like, what is this? And the little girl showed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait. And then the picture showed up and I was like, wait a second. I need to see it. And I saw it.
So hopefully there are other people out there who have not seen Whiplash, don't know what Whiplash is, never heard of Whiplash, that will get this thrust upon them in this way. And it should be, I just hope that they'll be able to enjoy it as much as I did. I mean, it's a personal movie for me. I played drums. I've been in jazz bands. I've not necessarily had a teacher or instructor like that, thank God. But, the whole thing, top to bottom, it interested me from, the first second, and it's masterfully put together. It's a singular vision, writer, director, and he was committed to it, committed to getting it made from the very beginning, making a short film, getting it into Sundance, getting financing, and moving all the way down the line and not compromising, which happened in the 90s, and it's easier to make it happen now, I think, because you can make movies for a lot less money, but to do that with the caliber that he's done it, I'm amazed.
Well, everybody put their heart and souls into it. Everybody did what they came and got paid to do. And you can tell that Miles Teller, he put in the time to rehearse to look like he's playing the drums.
Yeah.
He looks like he's playing the drums.
He is.
And then J.K. Simmons walks on screen and you're like, you got your fingers crossed because this is his time. Mm-hmm. There's this feeling about it. And I walked into the movie knowing it was his time. And you're thinking, okay, it's okay that it's his time, but I hope that this performance stands up to him being worthy that it's his time. And there's no debate. There's no debate. At first I thought it was a little one-toned and one note with the angry teacher and the student who's, naive and doesn't know. I thought we've seen this before. But then the thing about the student, the tragedy that happens to J.K. Simmons' character in the middle of the film, and it's grounded in such substance and such soul. And you're like, wait, this guy is not a nice person. I don't even know the words. I wouldn't say he was malicious, but he comes off as malicious. I wouldn't say he was vindictive, but he comes across as vindictive. I don't think those are even his concerns. I think he's concerned with the fact that he wants greatness out of these people. All else is not his worry. I don't even think he worries about his dishes or cooking or not. It's not even a thought on his mind. Getting this person to this place is the only thought. It doesn't matter what it takes to get there. Physical abuse included. And I had issues with that because I'm thinking no one. But then you brought up a good point. If Martin Scorsese slapped me, would I stay on set? Yes, I would.
Yeah, you
so
would.
You do what you got to do to get through it.
Yeah.
Then he has that moment that I'm talking about where he shuts down that veneer of vindictiveness, maliciousness, and shows you true heart. And you're thinking, why is he not showing that to his students? Because that's not what is important.
Yeah.
This person that he's talking to had what he's trying to get out of these students. So now he can
bring him in,
pay homage, for lack of a better term, to this person without giving too much away.
Yeah.
And it's just right there. I'm sure that's the scene they're going to show for the Oscars.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's gone straight down the line. And if he does not walk away with the Oscars, it will be the biggest jaw-dropping moment I've ever seen in the Oscars.
I think so. I will guess your number one.
Okay.
Fury.
You're right. What all of a sudden made you say that?
I looked at my list of top 20.
Yes, it is. And I wasn't surprised once I did the list, but I saw the poster, I wrote it down on my list, and I did what you did. I kind of did the elimination thing where I was like, okay, well, that's good, but that one's more.
What can I not live without?
Yeah, exactly. And there's two reasons why Fury is number one for me. The first reason is I was over the moon. We went to see that together, and I was so lit up after that film that I could not sleep that night. I was like, wow, it's everything a movie experience should be for me. It's a war picture. I would have never guessed that. I'm not particularly interested in war pictures. I'm not against them, but it's not like something, it's like Westerns. I like them, but it's not anything that just gets me going just thinking about it. But this film, whatever the integrity of this movie was, I saw it. And the second reason is because it went unnoticed. And this is kind of the second or third time in my movie-going history that a film has gone unnoticed. And I'm like, how could it have gone so unnoticed? Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe, directed by Ron Howard back in the day. We talked about it on the sports episode. It got no recognition. None. It came, went, it didn't find an audience. Fury found an audience to a degree. It did fairly well. But I think it's got a couple nominations in the list, but I'm not sure. I think maybe an editing or sound editing. I'd have to look at my list again. But no performances, which is crazy to me. The supporting actor category this year, I think, would have been way more interesting if Shia LaBeouf, or if you wanted to vote Channing Tatum into that. I've talked about this. Those two performances right there lit me up way more than the other four other than J.K. Simmons on the list. I've got no problem with the other four on the list, but there's just something kind of, that's good about the other four. Shia LaBeouf's performance in this is outstanding, and I think it's going to be that film that people look back on and go, how did this go unnoticed? And I think Brad Pitt's on point. I think the rest of and I know that when I rewatch it, I'm probably going to see the flaws that made people resist it a little bit, maybe more so than anything, maybe more so than Birdman. But for whatever reason, when I saw it, I went, oh, I love that movie. How can we not be talking about this at the end of the year?
So was it the experience of walking in and not really knowing what it was going to be, and then the whole time just realizing that it was hitting you in the right places, and was it that, or did you go in with a certain expectation?
No, I never go. I try not to go in with expectations. I usually don't. It's this. We've talked about this when I've talked about acting. There's this dead zone. I don't know how else to describe it. It's that Stephen King book about the guy who can touch people and he goes into a zone and he can see somebody's future, and they call it the dead zone.
Okay.
It's like that with acting for me. When a moment is working, the reality shifts. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. There's this weird little movement where you're no longer in this world, you're in that world. And for whatever reason, I call it the dead zone. It's just something that just makes sense to me. And when a good movie works, I'm not thinking about anything else but exactly that moment at exactly that time, from beginning, middle to end. And this movie did it for me. If I had to go to the bathroom, I don't remember that. If I was thirsty, I don't remember that. I had no expectations of this film. I might have even had a resistance to it because it is a war picture, and I'm thinking, okay, how much can I take? Sometimes war pictures can be a bit much living in that world for 2 hours, but there was something so right about this film. And I think when people finally do see it, who haven't seen it this year, who are just going on these lists for Oscar ballots and all that other stuff, when they finally do see it, they're going to be like, how did it not make it to any of the list? And I think it was a timing thing. It happened earlier on in the year, which is no longer as big of a deal as it was back in the day, because Silence of the Lambs kind of broke that trend. That came out in the summertime and still made it the best picture. You know, different films have come out earlier on and still make it on. Why this film didn't, it's not on a lot of people's top 10 list either, which I was a little surprised about. I thought I would see it on quite a few, but I don't know. It did critically well too. I mean, it did fairly well. So I don't know. There was just something so unexpected about the experience. And then everything in the film just clicked and clicked. I had never seen anything from a tank brigade. I'd never seen, we've determined that's what we're calling it, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen inside a tank, what's happening. I mean, just all of that. I'd never seen the reality of what a tank would do if it rolls over top of you in war. Those kind of things would happen. And that film does not pull punches. It shows you exactly what it is. And then the last shot, when the camera's pulling away, we talked about this in the podcast. Yeah. When the camera's pulling away, you're thinking, okay, it's the goodbye shot. Everybody lives happily ever after, yada, yada. And then you realize what that is and what it's showing you. And you're like, smack, smack, smack. I had a tad bit of issue with the way it ended with the guy underneath the tank. People who've seen the movie know what I'm talking about. A little small issue. But in the end, what was the other choice is always the question. So anyway, Fury's number 1.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So do you want to list back 5 through 1 again?
Sure, yeah. That sounds good. So we'll just go down the list.
Yeah, you go first.
Hold on.
I can go first.
Okay, go.
All right. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 4, American Sniper. Number 3, Nightcrawler. Number 2, Birdman. And number 1, Fury.
Nice. My number 5, The One I Love. Number 4. We didn't talk about my number 4.
Okay. Well, that's good that we're doing this then. Okay.
We just skipped it. I must have skipped to
I
Guardians
think you went
of the
to
Galaxy.
You went to my number 3. I thought there was a missing thing in there. I'm glad we're doing this then.
Wild.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Because
good for you.
It's because it is that movie. I mean, and it's not even necessarily for Reese Witherspoon's performance. It's more for how that movie was crafted, how that movie was put together, and it is infinitely interesting to me. I've only seen it once. I feel like I could see it a couple more times and still miss things that the director did in that movie to make it the interaction between the what the director's trying to do, the story the director's trying to portray, and how he's giving it to the audience. That was so interesting to me. We talked about it very recently in one of our podcasts when he just flashes things up in the same way that you or I may think about a memory.
Right.
You know, something triggers a memory, and it's these triggered memories, and he pays all of them off. I mean, that takes skill to do that, and just how he uses the sound editing, the audio, how he's able to, you know, he's got these amazing vistas. He peppers those in, but it's not it's not just a movie about, you know, beautiful mountains or, you know, arid deserts or
somebody's tragic life because their mother died. It's way more interesting than that.
It's layered and it's nuanced, and it does have good performances in it. But to me, the thing that holds that movie together and makes it so interesting is the way that the director decided to tell that story. So
I agree. I'm glad it's on your top 5 list. That's good that we've made mention of it again.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean,
I think you went
the way that we went down the list.
Yeah, we went to number 3 or something, or you asked me about my number 4, and then we went to your number 3. That's what
right.
It was.
And we went right to Guardians of the Galaxy after that. So anyway, number 5, One I Love. Number 4, Wild. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. People are going to be really confused the whole episode up until right now that I didn't have 5 films. Number 2, Birdman. Number 1, Whiplash.
Well, I think it sums up our personalities on some level. If you think about these lists, my personality is a little darker than I expected it to be in my top 5 list. Yours perfectly describes your personality. Perfectly. Cool. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now let's move on to I guess do we want to do like? Did you do screenplays or no?
We can. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
we'll do. We'll start with screenplays. Adapted screenplay.
so we're going to talk about who we think will win and who we would vote for.
Yes.
Okay.
So adapted screenplay. I'll go through the 5 nominees: Jason Hall for American Sniper, Graham Moore for Imitation Game, Paul Thomas Anderson for Inherent Vice, Anthony McCartan for Theory of Everything, and Damien Chazelle for Whiplash.
Who do you think will win?
So I didn't pick who will win. I mean, I haven't done that yet, but I think that it's probably going to be Theory of Everything, I guess. The thing is, I don't think they're going to get this right. But who should win is Damien Chazelle.
I agree.
Okay.
I
don't think they're going to get it right.
I think they are. I
You think so?
Right, because here's why. Yes, I
By
said
the way,
right. Did you
it
notice how I
should-
said right instead of yes?
Yeah, by the way, it shouldn't be an adapted screenplay.
Yes, this is why it's going to win. This is why it's going to win. Technically speaking, I understand that rule. The rule is if you make a film, short film, length doesn't matter, and then you use that idea to make another film based on it.
It's adapted.
Right. And that's how this fell into this category.
Right.
He made a short film to get money, but he didn't make a short film. He was making just a scene from the movie, but it counted. So
So is this the whole Pulp Fiction thing?
what do you mean?
Pulp Fiction won for adapted screenplay.
Right.
How was it adapted? What was it adapted from?
I have no idea.
Exactly.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So
Okay. Well, so you think what will win? Theory of Everything. What should win?
no. Here's what I think.
Good Lord, you got lit up, dude.
It's because
It's awesome though.
It's because I want him to win. I mean, I want anything Whiplash to win, and I'm very biased and whatever. But
Okay,
I feel
well-
like I just have this like built-in cynicism for, and maybe a lot of it has to do with David Fincher getting snubbed and Paul Thomas Anderson getting snubbed so many times.
Well, they're not. He's not snubbed here. Paul Thomas Anderson's not snubbed. It's
I know.
nice. That's a good screenplay
Yeah.
nomination. Okay, so you're thinking Theory of Everything, even though they're going to get it wrong, will win, but Whiplash.
No, I just pulled it out of my butt. I don't think that Theory of Everything.
Okay,
if you
choose
think,
now.
Okay, Chazelle.
Okay,
both.
I agree. I
Okay.
think that he will win, and I think that he should win, or I would vote for him.
Okay,
Because I found it infinitely interesting how he took a story we've seen kind of a lot. You know, it's Officer and Gentleman, just set in a different time frame.
Yeah.
We've seen it a lot, but he did it in a new and interesting way. He told that story in a new and interesting way. And screenplay is not necessarily the words, but it's the texture of what happens when the camera walks into the room. It's a dark lit room with one light on. That's all in the screenplay. That all counts.
and the structure, the
but most
bones,
people don't
you know.
really get that per se because they think it's just the words. But it's not. It's the structure. All right. So original screenplay.
Original screenplay: Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu for Birdman, Richard Linklater for Boyhood, E. Max Fry and Dan Futterman for Foxcatcher, Wes Anderson and a few other people for Grand Budapest Hotel, Dan Gilroy for Nightcrawler.
Who will win and who would you vote for?
Linklater's gonna win, and I would vote for Tony Gilroy.
Okay.
Or, sorry, Dan
Now
Gilroy.
you're going to light me up on this one. You're saying that Richard Linklater is going to win Best Original Screenplay for Boyhood.
Because Boyhood is the darling of the Oscars.
Okay, I don't get it. I
I don't get it either. I'm
Okay.
just telling you what it seems like it's going to happen.
yeah, I'm trying not to have the same reaction you just did.
Oh,
Okay.
It's probably better that you don't.
I think Birdman will win, but I would vote for Nightcrawler.
Okay, great. That's cool that we're on the same page. That's a great script, and it doesn't matter how well. It doesn't matter how well. Lost the name. That's how tired I am. Jake Gyllenhaal performs a line. If that line isn't there, he has nothing to perform. And I'm not minimizing all actors, but what I'm saying is like the words that come out of his mouth are written by Dan Gilroy.
Right.
The way that he does that is all Jake Gyllenhaal. So I totally get that.
Here's what I think is interesting. The scene where he's watching the TV and he's laughing and you have no idea why he's laughing so intensely, that's all in the screenplay.
Yeah.
That's written. So the actor has to produce that, but it has to be on the page in order for the actor to even know the idea exists. I mean, a lot of things happen organically on set, but normally the ones that really work are the ones that are written. So that's why I think that the screenplay, and I'm not going to be surprised what happens in this category, because I think that it's going to be the one where it's going to make me go, if Boyhood does win, because I just don't see. I did rewatch Boyhood.
Oh, yeah,
I've seen it a second time, and I thought there were a lot of interesting ideas in it, and it was the screenplay. So if it does win, okay, let's move on.
Okay, director. Well, Morton Tildum for which one is that?
Imitation
Game. There we go. Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu for Birdman, Richard Linklater for Boyhood, Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher, and Wes Anderson for Grand Budapest Hotel.
Who will win? Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Who would I vote for? Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. There's not another one on the list from me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, and I just hope that the Boyhood fandom doesn't leak over into director, because.
Okay, you want to see what kind? We should film my reactions, because that one's going to be a big one. Because there's not even a comparison for me. Yes, it took 12 years to make Boyhood. I get it. It's a great idea, and it's well done, and he stuck it out. But it just does not, to me, add up to more interesting of a film than the 3 or 4 years it took to make Birdman. The time frame doesn't matter to me. It's what finally came out on the screen. And what he did in Birdman, I don't think it's unprecedented. Has it ever been done before? Has the idea of one take ever been done for like that?
Yeah.
Where you're going into 1,000 different directions and 1,000 different sets, but it's still one shot. It's fascinating. And he got those performances out of him. And there's something about, he has a thumbprint. Boyhood, for me, it's a good movie.
It's also hard to have a thumbprint when Linklater as a director has changed over 12 years.
But that's my issue.
Yeah, and so how do you have a thumbprint?
If you had stuck with, but that's my issue. I mentioned that in the episode. If you had stuck with one narrative and forced yourself after 12 years to stick to that narrative, for me, it would have made a more interesting film. That's for me.
Definitely. All right, supporting actress. We got Patricia Arquette for Boyhood, Laura Dern for Wild, Emma Stone for Birdman, Meryl Streep for Into the Woods, and Keira Knightley for The Imitation Game.
Okay. Who will win? Who would you vote for?
Patricia Arquette's going to win. And I would vote for Emma Stone for Birdman.
We're on the same page.
All right.
And if there is a surprise, this is where it's going to come. And if there is a surprise, it's going to be the biggest surprise in Oscar history. And it's going to come.
It's going to be Laura Dern?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I'm not going to say it out loud.
Oh.
Because something has happened this year to where I've been doing this podcast and none of my predictions are coming true.
You're not even gonna say
No,
it.
Sir. Just mark my words that when I do say that's what I predicted might happen, I'm telling the truth.
Okay.
But if there probably isn't going to be a surprise, because Patricia Arquette has taken all of the major awards. And I did rewatch it again to try to understand what everybody was seeing in her performance. And I even started watching Medium again, her TV show. I'm way more interested in her in that show than I am in this movie. As a matter of fact, I don't want to diss on Patricia Arquette, because she probably next Sunday will be an Academy Award winner. And I'm fine with that, because I love her. But I actually thought watching it again would help me understand what everybody sees. I actually disliked her character even more this time, so it was harder to see. So if there's just, we'll talk about it after it happens.
Yeah.
Because good for her. I love her. If she's an Academy Award winner, I think she deserves to be. But maybe not for this for me. If I voted, I would vote for Emma Stone.
All right. Supporting actor, we've kind of already talked about this. We can go through all of them, but we think J.K. Simmons is going to win, and I think he should win. He's up against Mark Ruffalo for Foxcatcher, Robert Duvall for The Judge, Ethan Hawke for Boyhood, and Steve Carell for Foxcatcher.
And obviously, he will win for you, and you would vote for him.
Did I say Steve Carell for Foxcatcher? That's not right.
No, you said
I'm off by one.
You're Mark Ruffalo for Foxcatcher.
Yeah,
Did
and
you
then
say
who's the last one? I wrote it
Edward
down.
Norton for Birdman.
That's it. Edward Norton. For
Ethan
Birdman.
Hawke for Boyhood. Did you say that?
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
Edward Norton for Birdman. So
So you're saying he will win and you would vote for him, J.K. Simmons?
yes, yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I hesitated when I thought about this. I thought I might vote for Edward Norton just because everybody else is voting for J.K. Simmons. And Edward Norton did something in that movie that I can't put my finger on. You know how Ethan Hawke, who I wanted to see again in Boyhood to see why he was getting such acclaim for this film, and I don't like the character, and I don't like what the character does in the movie, especially the last scene. Do you remember the last scene between him and Patricia Arquette, where he's like, "I'd like to give you some money for this party. You know, you did a great job as a mother. I've never told you that before." And she's like, "Oh,"
yeah.
and then he's like, "Let me give you some money." He like, "Oh wait, I don't have any cash, but let me go borrow it from." Yeah, he's not a very likable character, but I didn't see why I didn't see why he would make a list of, you know, the Oscar nominees. But Edward Norton sort of plays the same kind of jerk in a way, and he doesn't have any great Oscar moments where he cries loud, screams, whatever. He has a drunken moment, and he has a little.
And he has the fight.
He has the
with
fight,
Michael
which is
Keaton.
great in his little teeny weeny bikini, leopard bikini underwear, which is hysterical, which makes it even funnier and more hard to watch. But there was something about it. You could still see the hurt soul underneath all of that. So I might quietly vote for him, but I'm pretty sure J.K. Simmons deserves it. So I'm okay with that.
Great. Actress, best actress, Julianne Moore for Still Alice, which you just saw recently.
Yes.
Felicity Jones for Theory of Everything, Rosamund Pike for Gone Girl, Marion Cotillard for 2 Days, One Night, and Reese Witherspoon for Wild.
Okay. Who will win? Julianne Moore.
Yeah.
Who would I vote for? Reese Witherspoon.
See, and it's up to this point where I've been back and forth the whole ride over here. This was the only one where I was back and forth, and I think because, you know, just because I think Rosamund Pike needs to be talked about more, I think I'm going to pick Rosamund Pike.
Until I saw Wild, I would have said the exact same thing. Even after seeing Still Alice, which she's phenomenal in.
Okay.
And everybody's like, it's her time. You know, she's been nominated 4 or 6 times, whatever it is. It's her time. It's a performance that stands up to her deserving it. You know what I mean? It's not just because it's her time. You know, but there is something really special about Rosamund Pike's performance. Something about Reese Witherspoon overcoming everything about Reese Witherspoon as an actress and all of her performances, which I have no problem with. I love all that stuff. I love Sweet Home Alabama.
And Legally Blonde.
I love it. I love it. There's some really genuine, funny moments. In Election, she's superb in that. But this was just a notch above. I'm not saying it's as character-driven as Rosamund Pike in Gone Girl. I mean, she was solid. But
they're both vulnerable performances, and that's where I was like, so why one over the other? And I was just trying to, I never came down solidly on one or the other, but I mean,
and I can get that, but we're pretty sure Julianne Moore's going to win. Yeah.
Best actor, Bradley Cooper for American Sniper, Benedict Cumberbatch for not Theory of Everything. See, I just have the last names here for Imitation Game. Eddie Redmayne for Theory of Everything. Michael Keaton for Birdman, and Steve Carell for Foxcatcher.
All right. So who will win, and who would you vote for?
It's going to be Eddie Redmayne probably. That's gonna win. But I would vote for Michael Keaton. Isn't it crazy that that's an actual thing, that he could actually beat Michael Keaton in this situation?
You are the third person that I value their opinion who has said that.
Well, but it's not my opinion.
I'm sorry. I'm saddened by that.
It's not my opinion. It's
no. I'm saying
it's the
your
trends of. I mean, didn't Eddie Redmayne win
everything?
The SAG and all that.
Everything.
Stuff? Yeah.
All the quote unquote important ones that are indicators that he's going to win the Oscar. I'm perplexed by that.
It would be an amazing surprise. And it would be a beautiful surprise if Michael Keaton wins.
He's still being considered the front runner by a lot of people, by Rolling Stone and Entertainment Weekly. And
so we can only be happy.
Yeah, that's true.
If we go in assuming that Eddie Redmayne's going to win.
I'm perplexed by this year because Patricia Arquette, who, once again, I'll state I love, but I'm perplexed by what has given her such acclaim for this movie. I wish, okay, this is what I want to say. Last year when Cate Blanchett won, I got it. I saw the performance. not my favorite performance of the year, but I saw what everybody else was seeing. I got why she was the front runner and why everybody would vote for her. I can't see it with Eddie Redmayne, and I can't see it with Patricia Arquette. I think they do what they came to do very well, and I think Eddie Redmayne is extremely charming and extremely sophisticated in his performances, never caricatured, and we've talked about the physicalness of it. It had to be hard, so good for him, and I'll be happy for him on some kind of level because this kid probably never expected this to happen. But you actually talked about this early on when we talked about movies that we saw trailers of. You were like, there's something special about The Theory of Everything. And then it kind of died down in our lexicon of movie-going thoughts. And then we saw it, and then, it's turned into this phenomenon that I don't quite get.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is that just the fact that the SAG Awards are all voted on by actors only, correct?
True.
And to get his name on this list, to get, Michael Keaton, Steve Carell, all these guys on this list, actors picked them. But for the Academy Award, it's not just actors voting.
Right.
It's everybody in the Academy.
Well,
that's another thing, is that maybe the actors look at the makeup appliances and his shoulder being all up at a weird angle and him sitting down throughout the whole, shooting of this movie, and they're looking at that and saying, like, that's difficult. I know that's difficult because I've worked with somebody who did something similar, or I've done that, or whatever, and they're honing in on that, whereas somebody who's a director or writer or whatever could be looking at the Michael Keaton performance and recognize it over the physical hoops that Eddie Redmayne has had to jump through.
And I do want to say this. I'm not trying to take anything away from these performances. I just want to understand it. Whether or not I liked it or disliked it, I can't determine that because I can't see what everybody else is seeing. And that's kind of bothered me this year. Normally I go, okay, I see that, but I don't necessarily agree with it. That's not my pick, or that's not the performance that lit me up, but I understand why that person is going to win. That's fine. This year I'm perplexed by it. So I will say this. I think Michael Keaton will win. Strangely enough, I would vote for Bradley Cooper.
Oh, there it is.
I kept going back and forth about this, and this is the third year in a row that he's nominated, and it's the third year I can say this, because I thought Daniel Day-Lewis will win. There's a prime example. I can see why everybody loved his performance. Not my favorite performance of the year, but I can look at it and say, this is an Oscar-winning performance.
For Lincoln.
Yeah, Lincoln. Okay. Even There Will Be Blood. Not my particular favorite performance of the year, but I get why people were over the moon about
blasphemy. You need to
I know,
stop
I know.
like
I knew
that.
you were going to say that. I purposely said it. Yeah, I know. People have my issues with my Gangs of New York review too. But anyway, the point is that Bradley Cooper, I would have voted for him for Silver Linings Playbook. That's an easy one. Then last year, I knew Jared Leto would win. Leto, however you say his name.
Leto.
Yeah, people go back and forth. Linklater. We'll one day determine how to say both of those. But I knew he was going to win, and I was touched by his performance, and I thought he was great. But I would have voted for Bradley Cooper in American Hustle. He's fantastic in that. And then you put this Chris Kyle character up against those two, and you go, first of all, which one of these don't go with the other? None of them. And it's not the same guy. You can tell he's a stage-trained actor who just transforms. I would love to see his Elephant Man, because I'll bet you it's even more mind-blowing to see that man do that live. But because people are going back and forth about Michael Keaton and Eddie Redmayne, and they're going to make up their mind. And there is this, I don't know if it's an urban legend or if there's possible truth in this, but there is a possibility that people can split the vote and a third person can win.
Yeah.
So if that's what happens, so be it. But who will win? Michael Keaton. I'm going to take a pause.
Amen.
That was awesome. But I would vote for Bradley Cooper.
All right.
Interesting.
Great.
All right.
I was just looking at all these actors, and it seems to be a trend. Everybody on this list, except for Michael Keaton's character, is a real person.
I said that.
You did say that earlier a second ago?
No. On when the nominations
episodes?
first came out.
That's right.
And I said, and technically speaking, you could probably add Michael Keaton to that list because he's sort of playing himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's just the trend of where we're going.
I don't have any
with
problem
movies.
with that because real life is, stranger than fiction. It's more interesting. I do say this: Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler was more interesting than 3 of the real people on this list for me.
Yeah, I would agree with 2 of those. Yes.
You know how I wanted to say this too. You know how you're always saying, well, who would we take off and who would we replace? The bottom line is these are the 5 Oscar nominated performances. You can't take anybody off. They're the Oscar nominees. They are Oscar nominatable or nominated actors, period. So you can't say, oh, I would take him off and put Jake Gyllenhaal on. Jake Gyllenhaal just didn't make the list.
Yeah.
For me, he did.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that'll
we need to do
out,
Best Picture.
Which we did already, right?
Did we?
Oh, I guess those are our favorite movies.
Yeah, but we didn't do
the nominees. You're right. You're right. Okay. Okay, American Sniper, Birdman, Boyhood, Grand Budapest Hotel, Imitation Game, Selma, Theory of Everything, and Whiplash.
This is easy for me. This is, I mean,
Yeah.
3 or 4 of them are on my top 5 list, which is great because they normally never match up. So who will win? Birdman.
Yeah.
Who would I vote for? Birdman.
Well, I have to vote for Whiplash.
I knew you were going to say that. Then vote for it. You should.
Yeah, I mean, because that's my number 1 movie of the year.
Absolutely.
So my number 1 movie of the year happens to be on the Best Picture list, so I'm going with that. But yes, Birdman will win, and it should win. That's what I'm going to say.
As he points his fingers, ladies and gentlemen, definitively. Okay, I'm in.
Other people may think differently, but
We're not even going to go there.
Yeah.
You pointed the finger. It's now done.
it's done.
That was fun.
All right. Okay. Well, we're done. We're done. Okay, so if you guys want to check us out on the web, our website is actorandengineer.com, facebook.com/actorandengineer. That's where you can find us on Facebook. And on Twitter, we're at actorengineer. And we'll see you next week.
I do want to say this, one last thought.
Ooh.
We want to say thank you to people who are listening. I don't think we've
Yeah.
taken the time to say thank you to people who are listening. We know people are listening because we can see people who've downloaded it. So we just want to
we don't know like everything
we
about
don't,
people.
no,
but
we're not
yes,
stalking anybody
no.
yet. No, I'm just kidding. But we've not taken the time to say thank you. And since this is the end of the Oscar race this week, you know, it's nice to say, normally I say until then at the end of the episode, but you know, this week I want to say thank you. So for everybody who's listening, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Especially if you've listened this far into this episode too.
Well, there's that.
All right. Bye.